Today's topic, we are taking a little bit of a break from the blue zones, and we are going to be talking about sleeping, the sleep cycle, what it is, like why is it so important? I mean, we all know that sleeping feels really good, right? Sometimes it's hard to wake up. But we all, a lot of us struggle with it. Either we struggle with falling asleep or staying asleep or just not feeling great when we wake up. Some of us struggle with snoring, different issues, but it's a complex cycle your body goes through, but it's very important. So today we'll talk first about kind of the basics behind it, like the cycle, what it does for you, what a lack of it does for you, or other people snoring. Yes, that's more my problem in this house. And then we'll talk a little bit about what tips can help, what you can do at home to make your sleep, to get more quality sleep. Quantity is important certainly, but quality is top importance. So, but first we're going to go ahead. We're going to do a 2-minute survey, just 6 or 7 questions. Just your first most honest answer. Okay, April's going to launch that.
Right.
I would say they probably 10 to 20% of what we see out there in terms of our client base. So they're prevalent and
the power of a host to mute somebody.
It is a very powerful feeling.
Be awesome to have that ability in real life, right?
Oh, I know, right?
Like a mute button.
Sorry, I just don't feel like hearing you talk anymore.
All right, we've got
Pretty
about
fantastic.
4 people left to finish the survey. All right, Katya's got her daughter taking the survey.
Ah.
All right, 3 more people.
I answered mine for a friend.
That's what they all say. It is anonymous, everybody.
That's right. I have a friend who just refuses to stop doing one more thing before he goes to bed.
Mm-hmm.
April, does that sound like anybody you know?
Yes, actually, I think we have the same friend.
Yeah. There are a lot of people like that, unfortunately.
Get like 10 more seconds for the last 2 people to finish the survey.
These are the same
For
people
some
that do.
reason, I cannot submit mine. It doesn't let me.
No? You scrolled
No.
all the way to the bottom?
Yes. Let me see.
I don't know, there should be like a save or submit button.
Is there somebody else who is having trouble?
It doesn't. For some reason, it doesn't let me.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll without the last 2 people.
Okay, and whoever didn't get a chance to, or if you didn't get a chance to answer the questions, feel free to speak up. But okay, let's see how we're doing. Okay, I'm actually surprised there's nobody here on the least amount, but that's good. As you'll see when we talk about suggested amounts of sleep, recommended amounts of sleep for each age group in a little bit, 7 to 8 hours is pretty pretty commonly suggested for adults. Of course, every person is a little bit different, but 7 to 8 hours is usually a good amount. Who does somebody want to volunteer that they were the one person who gets more than 8 hours?
More than 8. No, sorry. It wasn't me.
It's not me.
Katya says it's her daughter.
Oh,
Okay.
Good
Interesting.
job.
Well, that's true. It is summertime and she's a teenager, so fair enough. Okay. All right. Well, good. Overall, we're doing all right. 6 to 7 hours is a little bit below what is generally recommended for adults, but we're not too far off. On a scale of 1 to 10, how refreshed do you feel in the morning? Okay, 7 or 8. Nobody feels wholly refreshed, but that's probably not uncommon. A 4 out of 10, that's not real good. Whoever that is, we got to work on what you're doing. But 7 and 8, that's that's decent. I would say that's like a B minus. So pay close attention. We can talk about what habits at the end. We'll talk about what habits we want to work on. What is impeding us in getting that better quality sleep or more quantity. And hopefully we can all start waking up feeling a little bit better. What do you usually do in the 2 hours before bed? This will be interesting. Read, okay, 50%. Read, watch TV, exercise, meditate. So each of those is 50%. Okay. Oh, wait, sorry, what does that mean?
Sorry, I messed it up and it was supposed to just say read.
Read, okay. Okay, I was confused. But yeah, well, hopefully 50% of us do read. I read quite a bit before bed. Nobody exercises before bed. I mean, we'll talk about exercise before bed in a little bit. That's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you're doing it some other time of the day. Going for a nice little walk before bed is a different thing. We'll talk about that. Watching TV, scrolling social media, not awesome. Working, definitely not awesome. I'm do as I say, not as I do though here. Sorry. And then snacking. Snacking's fine. We'll talk about what are some good snacks to have right before you go to bed. And drinking tea, dinner. Molly, it depends what time you eat dinner. I suspect you're a later eater, so no, snacking's like if you're sitting in front of the TV and snack at 8:30. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit late, but we'll talk about that too. And then drinking tea. Chris is obviously one of those people. I'm not sure who the other one is, but it's not a bad practice. Okay. A nighttime snacker, yes, 10%, sometimes 50%. No, not many nighttime snackers. Interesting. Okay. 80% of us have not seen a doctor for a sleep-related issue. That's a good thing. 80% of us do not use a sleep tracker. I don't use one either. I've always been interested in whether they are truly accurate, what they, how they work. Jim, do you use one since you were the one who asked about that? Is it pretty accurate?
Stunningly so.
Okay. So what do you typically see in the morning when you look at your sleep tracker?
It shows when I've been especially quiet, which I think is the way it interprets. It does it on sound, not based on motion. And remarkably, I'll have woken up during the night to go to the restroom or just because, and it will capture that I was awake for a few minutes. And so what does it normally show? It shows that I get a fair amount of deep sleep on most nights. And it also shows that I turn it on and then usually hang out listening to a podcast or reading for about an hour. Okay. And then when I actually turn the light out, I go to sleep in about a minute and a half. That's good.
You're a pretty good model for a lot of this wellness stuff.
It frustrates Kip that I fall asleep that fast.
Yeah, no, I get that. It can be frustrating. And we'll talk a little bit about if you've got a partner you sleep next to and how that can be a hindrance for sure. But anyway, okay, in the interest of time, I will get moving. So we just talked about all these questions. Maybe at the end of this, if there are a few habits that you see you could use some work on, or you have some new habits you want to try to get into, perhaps you can come back to the survey, in a month or two, see if anything's changed for the better. But they are good questions to really think about, because sometimes we don't even realize the habits that we have gotten into. We don't realize what our routine is until we just stop and really look at it. And only at that point can we really pick out the parts of our routine that are not necessarily helpful, or healthy for that matter. So, why is sleep important? The average person, average adult, younger kids obviously sleep a lot more. But the average adult will spend about 1/3 of their lifetime sleeping. If you think about that, that's a pretty big number. So, we spend, we're not all in the office right now, but we spend a good amount of our time in the office, 1/3 of our time sleeping. And then that doesn't leave a whole lot of time for, your other activities just at home. So definitely want to maximize those hours and really, use those hours that you have at home to drive productive sleep, productive quality sleep. Sleep is very important to survival. It's kind of right up there with food and water, but the biological purpose is still somewhat of a mystery to scientists and doctors, because it's an enormously complex system that really engages and affects every single system and tissue really in your body. We'll talk about some sleep myths in a little bit, but sometimes people assume that when you're asleep, like your body just basically, not completely shuts down, obviously, but goes into really low power mode kind of. And in a sense, at certain points of your sleep cycle, that is true. However, your brain is still very active while you're asleep. It does a lot of its housekeeping during those hours when you're asleep. One word that gets thrown around a lot in kind of the wellness realm is toxins. I'm always hesitant to tell people that something will remove toxins from your body. The juice cleanse, for example, was something that for a while was promoted as this great toxin removing mechanism, or fasting. However, there is some legitimate scientific evidence that the brain is, actively removing toxins while you're asleep. If you think about it, when you are awake, your brain is so engaged in so many ways, especially in our kind of Western world where we all have so many, I've got my phone, I've got an iPad, I've got my computer at work, I've got 2 screens. You've got all these people around you, like 100 different scheduling items to remember. So like what your brain, if you really stop and think, pun intended, about what your brain does just kind of on a daily basis when you're awake, it is phenomenal. So it only makes sense that your brain needs that downtime to take care of itself, right? To remove the bad stuff, to bolster the good stuff, and to really work on just kind of making sure everything is in working order. So, but again, sleep does not only affect the brain, it's very vital for the rest of your body as well, for your lungs, for a properly functioning immune system, for building your immunity and, your immune system, and also for your mood. I'm sure we've all experienced the whole sleep deprivation crankiness thing. I don't think Raluca's on this call, otherwise she would probably call me out right now, but I'm a very, very light sleeper. I know a lot of people are, so I don't really get a whole lot of great sleep a lot of times. However, when I truly do not, like if I don't want to say pull an all-nighter because I'm not a college student anymore, but for whatever reason, I get like 2 hours of sleep. I am cranky the next day. It's really hard to maintain your mood. And thus, lack of sleep is something that does really exacerbate mental and emotional conditions like depression, anxiety, etc. So point being, at the end of the day, sleep, water, food, sleep. Without those 3, our bodies just cannot keep functioning for long. Oops, let's see here. So the physical effects of sleep, like I already mentioned, that there's some evidence that that is a time when the brain removes toxins. It's also a time when the brain processes new memories, or what you did that day. It builds pathways in the neurons, so those nerves are being bolstered, and this allows you to learn new things, and again, creating those memories. We had that webinar on nutrition for language learning. Well, in a sense, this is kind of sleep for language learning, because if you don't sleep properly and then you go to the classroom the next morning, your attention span is shot, your nerves are shot. It's almost impossible to really retain any new information in any kind of meaningful way. So the night before a big test, I won't go down that road hugely, but if you've got a big test or something the next morning that will really just require that your brain is on, maybe a big presentation at work or something, it's typically not a good idea to cram a lot or to practice that presentation a lot, so basically to not stress a lot about it in those couple hours before bedtime, because you're just building up that, I don't want to, maybe negative energy, you're building up the stress, you're putting your body and your brain under a lot of duress. So, take care of your brain, take care of your body, get enough sleep, and let yourself just relax. Let your body and brain do what it needs to do to make sure you're prepared for the next day. And quality, sufficient sleep has also been shown to decrease the risk of hypertension, high blood pressure, a myriad of different cardiovascular diseases. It's a very strong tie to obesity. I have this figure written out. So there were a bunch of studies done about the tie between obesity and sleep deprivation a couple of years ago, and what came of that was 89%. The increase in risk of obesity for children was increased by 89%. That's almost 100%, and 55% in adults. So there's a very serious, concerning connection between sleep deprivation and obesity. And tied with that, diabetes. When your body does not produce enough melatonin, which is the main hormone that your brain produces, your body produces when you go to sleep, your body's ability to process sugar, to produce insulin, it's greatly decreased. So there's also a strong link between sleep deprivation and diabetes. And then also, as I mentioned already, depression. When you're sleep deprived, it's really hard to pull yourself out of a dark place. It's much better to wake up on the sunny side, having gotten enough good quality sleep. Just really helps increase the likelihood that you're going to have a positive outlook on life. Now, the circadian rhythm. What is that, or what are those? There are actually multiple circadian rhythms of your body. It's really any cycle that your body goes through in a 24-hour period. The one that we are most familiar with, of course, is the light-dark circadian rhythm. So, as it says here, the natural cycle, physical, mental, and behavior changes that the body goes through in a 24-hour cycle. The circadian rhythm associated with sleep is affected very strongly by light and darkness. Now, certainly there are extenuating circumstances where you can adjust to different periods of light and dark. Thinking specifically of countries like Sweden, Finland, where it's during the winter it's dark, can get dark for pretty much the entire day, whereas during summer you wake up at 3 a.m. and it's basically bright sunlight outside. So there are ways to mitigate that, blackout curtains, etc. Having some of those special sleep lamps that will give, or those special kind of fake sun lamps. But your body can adjust to different types of different percentages of light and darkness. But again, that natural rhythm is very strongly affected by light and dark. So there is a reason why you feel more tired as it starts getting dark. Now, this circadian rhythm is controlled in the brain, perhaps not surprisingly. And then SleepWake Homeostasis. This is something that happens, it's a process that happens in your body. It basically drives your body's need to sleep at a certain time. So from the moment you wake up, you are progressively, whether you realize it or not, you're progressively heading towards sleep, essentially. Your body is progressively getting towards the point where it needs to shut down for a little bit. So, your body is doing what it was meant to do. Sometimes we need to stay up late to finish a project. There are certainly reasons to alter your sleep patterns, but listen to your body, because this is a pretty strong biological cycle it's there for all of us. So pay attention to it. Now, the sleep cycle. We've all heard of REM sleep, right? Perhaps you've also heard of non-REM sleep. So there are basically 5 cycles, 5 steps in the sleep cycle. The first 3 are all part of the non-REM portion of your sleep. And this part lasts about 90 minutes, give or take a few minutes. The first stage is basically you're awake, your transition from being fully awake to being kind of slightly asleep. So your brain waves and your heartbeat start to slow down. That's when you might, like, if you've ever been falling asleep and your muscles twitch, like maybe your leg muscles twitch and it wakes you up. That is the stage where that happens, when you're not quite asleep yet, but your body's getting there. Number 2, the second stage is light sleep. Over the course of the night, you will likely spend most of your time in this stage. This is when your muscles really start to relax. You're not experiencing those twitches anymore. Your body temperature starts to drop. Your eye movement stops. Perhaps you've heard about like the rapid eye movement. In stage 1, your eyes are still moving. In stage 2, that stops. And also in stage 2, your brain activity starts to slow down a bit. Now, deep sleep, you do need to reach the stage of the non-REM part of the sleep cycle in order to feel fully refreshed in the morning. This is when your heartbeat reaches its low. So when you wake up in the morning, if you've got I've got a Garmin, so I can see my heart rate over the course of the night, like the lowest rate, this is during the deep sleep portion. So your breathing slows down, your heartbeat slows down, and your brain waves also continue to slow down. So that is for the first 90 minutes or so. And then you get to the 4th stage, which is REM sleep. So basically what happens here, so you can see in this lovely pictograph, so you go through the first 3 stages, and then you get to REM sleep, and it's like your brain suddenly kind of wakes up, actually. So even though you are pretty deeply asleep, your brain actually becomes more active. There's a lot of different frequency brain waves actively doing stuff, like working on that, the memory processing, the neuron bolstering, the housekeeping, essentially. That's also when you really get the rapid eye movement behind your eyelids. Your eyes are closed. There are rare instances where people sleep with their eyes open, but for the most part, they're going to be closed. So you're not watching somebody do this. Your breathing also becomes faster again. If you remember correctly, with non-REM sleep, it was really slowing down kind of continuously. Now it's going to get faster again, slightly irregular. And your heart rate and your blood pressure increase to near waking levels, which I actually did not know before I started researching for this PowerPoint. But that's interesting. So, you get to deep sleep, stage 3 of non-REM sleep, everything's at its lowest point, everything's shut down more or less, and then you get to REM sleep, and it's like your body starts to wake up, but you are still asleep. The other thing that's interesting about the REM sleep stage is that is when your muscles are paralyzed. The reason, we don't of course know the biological reason, but it seems most likely it's because this is also when you dream the most. REM sleep is when you'll experience most of your dreams. If your muscles were not paralyzed, we would probably see a lot more instances of sleepwalking, which is of course potentially, yeah.
So how are you dreaming if you're sleepwalking and talking in your sleep all the time? What's the stage of that?
Well, that's REM sleep. I don't know that they even have an answer for why some people, the muscle paralysis doesn't happen for some people. There's just some dysfunction there.
Don't call it dysfunction. It's not fair.
What?
I do my exercise class in my sleep, remember?
Oh, right. Well,
Molly looks at it as a superpower.
No.
you're asleep right now, Molly. I mean, yeah, I don't know how it happens.
Special, Molly.
It's, I don't know what the percentages are in terms of, how many people in the US, for example, not suffer because it makes you unique. I don't know how many people sleepwalk. I've never done it. Nobody in my family has. I've sleep talked, but never slept walked. So there just must be some part of the process that's not happening with regards to the muscle paralysis. So, so for most people, their dreams happen, they're paralyzed, so they can't play them out in real life. But for a special few, that's not the case. So that could be good research for you after this, though. Figure that out. Yeah. It is scary. I know people who have done it, and I can imagine it's quite frightening to wake up and have no idea how you got somewhere. But anyway, so that is the sleep cycle. Now, like I said, most of the dreaming does occur in the REM portion or the REM section of your sleep. So on average, even if you may not remember, what you dreamt, most of us will spend an average of about 2 hours every night dreaming, assuming you're going, you have the opportunity to go through the full sleep cycle. And I'm sorry, I did say that there are 5 steps in the sleep cycle. After REM sleep, the fifth one is repeat. So your body, you will go back and start over and go through the entire process again. Now, the exact purpose of dreams is not known. I mean, this could have been a gigantic rabbit hole that I could have gone down here. Everybody's got a different theory on dreams. I mean, is it your subconscious working through issues? Is it some kind of clairvoyant thing? Who knows? Nobody really knows. But it can be quite interesting. It can be quite enlightening if you do happen to remember your dreams. I don't remember mine that often, and I think probably most of you also experience it where you wake up and you have kind of a vague sense of what you dreamt about, but recalling specifics just becomes really difficult, even as the minutes and seconds tick by. Dreams can occur in other stages of the sleep cycle, most specifically the deep sleep cycle. However, they are the most vivid in that REM sleep, in the REM sleep part. And for some reason, dreams tend to be especially vivid for pregnant women. I don't know why. I'd heard that before I was pregnant, and I can vouch for that. It's weird. But I also did not realize this because I'm pretty sure my dreams are in color, but they can actually be in color or black and white. Some people only dream in black and white. Some people only dream in color. Don't know why, but it's very, very interesting, I think. All right, now how much sleep do we actually need? So again, take this with a little bit of a grain of salt because of course everybody is different. We all have different needs. Some of us just, even if we really do physically need a certain amount of sleep, some of us can function better than others on a lack of sleep. But in general, these are kind of general guidelines. Babies need anywhere from like 18 to 19 hours. Toddlers up to about the age of 5, it's about 10 to 14 hours. School age and teenagers, Katya, your daughter, 8 to 11 hours. In adults, the recommended amount is typically 7 to 9 hours. Now, if you get into, as you get older, typically we all kind of sleep less as we age. Part of that is just, more's going on in your body. Things are a little bit creakier. Sometimes, typically we tend to take more medication as we get older. That's not a blanket statement, but most people will take a few new medications as they get older, and medication can affect sleep. And like I said, if you're maybe just a little bit creakier, like, you know, I run a lot, my body's only going to start complaining about that more the older I get. So it's harder to get comfortable the older you are. But once you get to maybe, I think it was 60 plus, there does tend to be, people do tend to nap more. So they still need the sleep, but quite often it's more like broken up over the course of the day as opposed to one shot of sleep. Cats, 12 to 16 hours. Yeah, I would say my dog's like 20 hours right now, but okay. Sleep deprivation, not a good thing. There's a whole lot that can go wrong, a whole lot you're up against if you become severely sleep or even mildly sleep deprived. First and foremost, impaired cognition. Like I said, you know, it does become incredibly difficult to process any new information, to learn anything new if you are sleep impaired. It impairs your memory. It becomes harder to recall facts or just, you know, anything like what happened yesterday. If you've ever tried to recall something or really think about something when you really are tired, you know, it's almost like the thoughts are there, but they're like running away from you. You're chasing your thoughts in your brain is how I would describe it. But, and then over time, of course, you know, if it's a chronic sleep deprivation issue, that can lead to kind of more chronic long-term cognitive decline. Increased symptoms of depression. Again, you know, lack of sleep, as it says here, disrupts those neurotransmitters that do actually regulate mood. So there is a chemical reason for this, but also just the whole idea of, you know, you're tired. It's like when you're hungry, you know, anytime you really need, your body is signaling to you that it needs something desperately. You're really thirsty, you're really hungry, you're really tired. Your mood is just, it's gonna plummet. You know, you're not gonna be as patient, you're not gonna be in a good mood, you're probably not gonna feel like cracking jokes. So there's a pretty strong tie between depression and sleep deprivation. And in fact, you know, if you become chronically sleep deprived, it can lead to some pretty severe neurological issues as well. You know, paranoia, what's the word? People can get very paranoid, they can hallucinate. You know, there's a reason that one form of torture that has been, I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but you know, sleep deprivation is actually considered a form of torture. I don't know about you guys, but like the few times in my life when I have been just seriously sleep deprived, maybe after like a really long international trip or something, I mean, you literally don't care about anything but going to sleep. It's almost impossible to keep your eyes open. I'm not talking about sitting in, you know, 8th grade math and, you know, doing the head bob and struggling to keep your eyes open. But seriously chronic sleep deprivation, that's, your body becomes focused solely on getting you to sleep because your brain and your body know that they need that time to recoup and recover. But, you know, if you're not allowed that time, that is considered actually a form of torture. Hopefully it never gets to that point for any of us, but still good to know that these things can happen. So high levels of anxiety, very similar to, you know, depression in many ways. It's been shown to increase your risk of breast cancer. The whole melatonin, when you don't sleep, you have less melatonin in your system, which messes with the estrogen production, and just a whole chain of bad stuff happens. Your risk of stroke, says here, increases by 4 times. That's pretty significant. Increased risk for heart disease. You know, I mentioned already hypertension is not an uncommon problem that can stem from sleep deprivation. And part of that is because your blood pressure does naturally decrease when you sleep. So if you're awake a lot and your blood pressure is always at its highest peak, its highest level, that's not good for your body. We talked about the increased risk for diabetes, and then weight gain. When you're really tired, you know, there's a lot of hormonal imbalances going on in your body. So you're probably not making the best decisions about what to eat. You know, you've got that, was it ghrelin, the hunger hormone. It's like raging, and you're tired. You're not, you know, you just, thinking straight is not your not your forte when you're really tired. So we all tend to make worse decisions about what we eat when we're really tired. We also don't, feel like sitting down and preparing like a full vegetable-laden meal. So, pizza, fast food, whatever can just immediately stave off that hunger is what we're going to go for. So it can lead to weight gain, and if not weight gain, just unhealthy food choices, which as we know from the other webinars is not leading anywhere good. Now let's talk a little bit about some sleep myths. There's been some mention of snoring here. And I'm not saying that everybody believes these myths, but these are kind of commonly held beliefs that have been debunked. Snoring, I mean, let's face it, it can be really funny, right? It's my dad snored like a freight train all growing up, and I still remember like hearing him through 2 closed doors. My grandmother on his side snored, my husband snores, my daughter snores, my dog snores. I don't snore, and I feel like I'm surrounded by snorers. So it's not a fun thing to be around, but it's not a harmless. It's also not harmless. Snoring can actually indicate something that can be potentially very, very debilitating, which is sleep apnea, where somebody actually stops breathing for a moment and gasps for air, and that's incredibly disruptive for their sleep. Obviously, not getting air is not a good thing. This is often tied to obesity as well, so it's kind of a bad cycle. But more often than not, snoring is indicative of some underlying issue. Not always, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a serious issue, but if one of your loved ones does snore a lot, have them go see a doctor. Even if everything else seems very fine and healthy, it never hurts to be just, better safe than sorry. Another myth is that you can pay back is strictly untrue. You can't sleep 2 hours tonight and then say, okay, I'm going to sleep 18 hours tomorrow night and I'll be fine. Your body thrives on routine. Your body thrives on that habit, on getting a consistent amount of sleep and rest and recovery. Getting 2 hours of sleep in one night is still only getting 2 hours of sleep. I mean, your body misses that entire night's worth of really recovery time. Certainly, does it feel really good to sleep in late sometimes on the weekend? I mean, honestly, I can't remember the last time I was able to do that, but I would imagine it does feel really good. But you can't make up a deficit. You can certainly change your habits so you are getting more sleep and benefit from that. But if you have a sleep deficit right now, that's just water under the bridge. Gotta just move on from that. Another myth is that being tired during the day automatically means you aren't getting enough sleep. It can, of course, if you have a bad night's sleep, certainly you're going to feel tired during the day. But again, like with the snoring, if you're really tired during the day and you're still you're sleeping a lot at night, there's probably an underlying issue. It could be like a thyroid issue. Something, if you're diabetic, that blood sugar can really affect you. So if you're really chronically feeling fatigued during the day, even though you are sleeping, or if you aren't sleeping and you feel tired during the day, see your doctor. It's always worth getting checked out if you feel like there's anything amiss, because you don't want to take the chance. Could mean depression. There's a lot of different things that could be going on if you're tired. As I mentioned, the older you get, the less sleep you need. That is also a myth. It doesn't mean that it's not true that the older you get, generally, the less sleep you actually get. But we do, the older we get, we do still need as much sleep, because if anything, our bodies are working a little bit harder because, there's more wear and tear. So as we get older, if you find that you have a voracious habit of waking up at 4 a.m. and you just can't get back to sleep, just go with it and then try to build in a nap later in the day. Try to go to sleep a little bit earlier. Try to, get the full amount of sleep within the 24-hour period in whatever way you can. And then the myth that the brain actually just rests during sleep. As I mentioned with the brain or the sleep cycle, there are certain points kind of in the beginning when your brain activity slows down, but it never fully stops. Certainly we don't want it to. And it's actually when the brain kind of gets a little worker bee when you're asleep. It's doing a lot of restoration and recovery and getting ready for the next day. So what can we do? What can we do to make our lives and our sleep schedules better? What can we do to make sure that we get more and better sleep? I feel like I mentioned vitamin D in like literally every single webinar I do for whatever reason, but it's true. You know, the circadian rhythm, it's, like I said, that is a very primal biological cycle that your body is going through. So don't deprive it. During the day, get a lot of bright light, you know, not necessarily talking about like garish overhead lights, but get outside, get some natural light, work by a window. You know, if that's not possible, invest in some good, solid indoor lighting. But you do need that light during the day in order for your body to really reach that that point where, you know, you've gone through the process of homeostasis and you're ready for sleep. Now, kind of on the flip side, you want to avoid like a lot of blue screen light in the couple hours before bed, if possible. I know this one's hard. A lot of us are really busy, and like, you know, at the end of the day, all you want to do is veg out on the couch and catch up on whatever show you're watching. Like, I get that, and I certainly am not immune to that myself. Or, you know, April and I were talking earlier about how her kind of Achilles heel with this is social media before bed. I know I keep my phone, it's my alarm clock, so I'm always scrolling through stuff, you know, right before I go to bed. Try, you know, as we talked about with other things, incrementally, maybe turn the TV off and your phone off and all screens off like 10 minutes before bed. Move it to 20, like, you know, baby steps. Don't try to go cold turkey or you're much less likely to succeed, but baby steps. Stay away from the Starbucks. Caffeine is not your friend after, you know, 12 p.m., 2 p.m. It affects everybody a little bit differently, but generally speaking, as I mentioned in my wellness tip, any caffeine consumed in the really 6 to 8 hours before bed, it has a chance to seriously mess with your sleep. So you may not feel like it. And I mean, maybe you aren't making that connection. I mean, I personally drink quite a lot of coffee. So if I have a rough night's sleep, I pretty much always attribute it to something else. But the caffeine could certainly be having an effect. So if you must have some kind of like coffee or tea or something in the afternoon, make sure it's decaf. It's a marginal amount of caffeine in that anyway. And then with tea, you know, herbal tea, there are plenty of varieties of that. And then keep a regular schedule. You know, like I said, your body thrives on that regularity. I can't stress that enough. So do it a favor and try to keep a normal schedule. That's not to say that if on Friday night you're up later than usual, you know, and you sleep until, you know, 9 or 10 or whatever the case may be. It's not to say you have to be completely rigid. You know, you do need to be a little bit flexible. Stuff happens. But what is not a good idea is to have one sleep schedule during the week and then completely, you know, on the weekends, try to make up that time and sleep until noon. You're not gonna feel well rested. Your body's not gonna know what to do. It's gonna throw off that entire circadian rhythm. So as much as possible, keep a regular schedule. And then some additional things you can do. You know, avoid or at least limit alcohol before bed. Even though, you know, alcohol, especially if you have a certain amount of it, can make you fall asleep very quickly. It interferes with the production of melatonin, which is that hormone that your body produces when you fall asleep. So it, you know, as they always say, like alcohol it can knock you right out, but sleep or alcohol-induced sleep is not restful sleep. So, you know, if you have some wine with dinner, have it with dinner, and then, you know, perhaps just drink water after dinner, or just have one glass if that's your ritual. I'm not going to say don't have it at all, but just try to keep it to a minimum. Avoid big meals before bed. I mean, Molly, you eat late at night. I know there are plenty of people who eat dinner later at night, but one thing to keep in mind, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing depending on what time you go to bed, but if you go back to those webinars, the Blue Zone webinars, if you are adhering even loosely to the idea of breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper, then you should be okay. If you're eating like a massive plate of spaghetti and meatballs at 10 o'clock, you're probably going to feel your body's not going to love that, because you're starting the digestion process, not to be gross, but if you don't start digesting your food until 10 o'clock and then you go to bed at 10:30, I mean, you're going to wake up feeling like there's a lump of coal in your stomach. And it interferes with the other processes that need to happen while you're asleep. So eating before bed is fine. I'm definitely a grazer by nature anyway, so I tend to snack a little bit before bed, but don't just keep it, don't go for the big stuff right before bed. Having a McDonald's or Taco Bell run, at 11 o'clock at night, probably not a good idea. And then wind down. Like I said, this is not always easy, not always what we want to do, but ultimately you will feel better. You'll probably find that you fall asleep easier, are more relaxed, able to slide into the stage 1 and stage 2 of sleep if you wind down, not by watching Kill Bill or something like that, but maybe listening to, a nice podcast like Jim does, or some lower key music, reading a book, taking a hot bath, meditating, what we've always talked about, something that helps you just relax. Like don't go for activities that rev you up. It's basically what we're looking at. Sorry, I'll speed it up a bit here. Sleep-friendly bedroom. So of course, it's hard to sleep if you're not comfortable, right? So a few things to keep in mind when you go in, maybe tonight, go in and look at your bedroom with like a critical, fresh eye. Mattresses can be expensive. Good sheets, pillows, they can be expensive too. But if you consider the fact that you're spending about a third of your life in that bed, it's probably an investment that's worthwhile. And there have been multiple studies that show you can get up to a 60% improvement in the quality of your sleep if you have a good quality mattress and pillows. And good quality, it doesn't mean you have to buy the most expensive mattress, but you want to buy one, you want to make sure that you are getting a mattress that is what works for you. If you've got back issues, maybe a really soft bed is not what you want. Likewise, some people cannot sleep on hard beds. So go to an actual store, get somebody who knows what they're talking about, and invest in at least, don't just buy the first on sale mattress you find if you can avoid it. And then you do want to replace your bedding every 5 to 6 years. Your mattress, I'm horrible about this, but you do want to flip it. I think it's actually every couple of months, but you definitely want to also think about replacing your mattress every few years. And keep the temperature comfortable. That will depend on the person, but typically anywhere, excuse me, I put 65 to 70 degrees here. I would say actually it's probably closer to 60 to 70, just depending on your comfort. And I do realize that if you sleep with somebody else, you might have very different ideas of what comfortable temperature is, and I feel for you. So try to minimize external noise. A lot of that is obviously out of your control. It depends where you live, but keep the windows shut if there is some external noise, if you live near a highway or something, and then minimize artificial lights. Try to, that's hard if you've got like an alarm clock, or if your cell phone is being lit up all night or something, but just try to minimize those artificial lights. Turn off your TV. I know sometimes if you have a TV in your bedroom, try not to pass out while it's still on. Easier said than done sometimes, I know, but those artificial lights can really wreak havoc with your sleep quality. Now, exercising. So we all exercise, right? I think most of us do anyway, but everybody's different, right? I'm definitely 100% a morning exerciser, but I also know people who exercise only at night. It's just personal preference, but there are a lot of things that can go into it. Personal preference, your schedule, whatever the case may be, for whatever reason. If you're a nighttime exerciser, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you not to exercise, because that would be irresponsible. And I would, you do need to exercise, but if you do, make sure that you are doing it, you know, at least 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, because I mean, exercise is by nature, it's a stimulatory activity. You're increasing your adrenaline, epinephrine, these hormones that you don't want in abundance when you're trying to sleep. It's kind of the opposite effect. So it's an individual thing to a certain extent. Some people can exercise an hour before bed and be fine, but generally speaking, if you are a later in the day exerciser, try to make sure you give yourself enough time to properly wind down. You know, that said, regular exercise, in addition to all of its other benefits, has been shown to, in multiple studies, reduce the time it takes to fall asleep by about half, anywhere actually from 50 to 60%. From what I saw, decreases your total night wakefulness, how many times you wake up at night, and has been shown to increase the time that you are actually asleep by 40 to 60 minutes, depending on the study. So you should still exercise, but just be aware of the timing. And now, what about napping? I was just talking earlier this week about how in Ikaria, they embrace the idea of napping. There's certainly nothing wrong with naps, but you know, and it is, again, with everything, it is an individual thing, but generally speaking, just keep them on the shorter side. If you start getting those, if you start with those long naps, you know, if you nap for like 2 to 3 hours, you think about that, you are well into REM sleep by the time you wake up. I mean, you're just confusing your body. You're really messing with the circadian rhythm. So a shorter power nap, like 15 to 45 minutes, can help perk you right up. But just try to minimize, you know, keep them short. Now, nighttime snackers. Yeah, it didn't look from the poll like there were that many of us, but you know, again, like I said, I like a nighttime snack. Sometimes it's not the healthiest thing, other times it is, but these are some really good things that you can eat, because you want something that's not going to just sit in your stomach. A little bit of protein is good because that will help you sleep through the night, that will fill you up, so you don't want to go to bed like starving, because that will also interfere with your sleep. So going to bed comfortably full, maybe not even full, but just like comfortably satiated. But these are some good ideas that you can have at night and not feel too bad about yourself. They'll help you. They won't interfere with your sleep. In fact, they may actually help you sleep. But yes, any kind of fruit with nut butter, cottage cheese, nuts, yogurt, baby carrots, edamame, air pop popcorn, a piece of whole grain toast with some avocado, or like one packet of hot oatmeal. That will be kind of soothing as well. So now, what's the deal with sleep aids? I'm not going to recommend anything specific to you guys because I'm not a doctor. However, you know, there are certainly plenty of sleep aids out there. You know, I've taken Tylenol PM before. I don't honestly know if it helped. Sometimes I felt like it did. Sometimes I felt like it didn't. Everybody reacts differently. But there are some relatively natural sleep aids that you can take that, you know, that have been shown to have some moderate effect on your sleep. But, you know, like the last thing there is the most important though. Always talk to your doctor. If you want to start taking some kind of supplement regularly to help you sleep, talk to your doctor first. There might be something else going on that's interfering with your sleep that's not going to be improved by a sleep aid. But you can get melatonin. I know my dad uses that quite often. He's got pretty bad sleep issues. You can get that at like Whole Foods, any kind of natural market. Safeway may have it now. There are other natural supplements, lavender, valerian root, ginkgo, and then magnesium has been shown to really improve relaxation and sleep quality. Now, okay, just a few minutes left. So you don't have to do this right now because we're about out of time, but just something to think about. You know, maybe jot some notes down if you don't have to be anywhere right away. Think about what you do at night, about your nightly routine right now. What improvements can you make? Perhaps shutting down the screens a little bit earlier. Maybe switching your usual nighttime snack of, you know, ice cream, a bowl of ice cream with an apple and some almond butter or something like that. Are you uncomfortable at night? Do you find that you're tossing and turning a lot? Is it maybe time to take a look at your mattress and see if that's the culprit. So what impediments do you face to a good night's sleep? Do you live right next to a busy highway? Is the noise really bothering you? Do you find that you're constantly waking up and like first thing you do is checking your email? If so, maybe it's time to invest in an alarm clock instead of your phone, and putting your phone in the other room so you don't have the urge to wake up and look at that. But just think about it, because like I said, sleep is one of the three most important things that we need for our overall health. And a lot of us are not properly getting it. We're not getting enough and we're not getting good sleep. So think about it. In a couple weeks, maybe I'll check in, see how people are doing. Yeah, any questions, any comments, any thoughts or things that have worked for you guys in the last minute or two?